Hello and welcome to TYT Community here on this Friday night. Got a great show for you tonight. I'm, of course, your host, Jeff Waldorf, and joining me tonight is Haven, Sean, and Tom. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, Jeff. Hi, everybody.
If you're wondering why Haven is wearing your costume, I'll let you explain, Haven.
Well, Halloween is probably my favorite holiday of all time, and I just so happened to get invited to a Halloween party, and I figured instead of partying with them, I'd party with you guys instead.
And that is why you're awesome, Haven.
Yeah, that's like the scientific notion of the thing, yeah.
You know how much we love science here. Sean, Tom? Hey, guys. What's up?
Hello. How are you?
I'm here.
I'm here too.
I'm ready to crush some news. The news crushers.
There we go. Let's
scared of Halloween. There's monsters out.
Only the ones in your head, Sean.
I'm doing the news. Everybody who's wanted to see her, here she is. I'm doing the news with Minute. So, I'm my little stalker.
All right. So, we do have some good stories today. Damn.
I'm allergic to dogs.
And let's see. We're going to have Haven present a story later on in the second half of the show. That's going to be fun. Interesting story that she's bringing on the, was it gentrification? Fascinating. That's going to be a great discussion. But first, of course, we've got reactions to the shooting in Canada that happened earlier this week. Minimum wage story, of course. Something decent happening in Texas. That's kind of amazing. As well as hazing and a couple of other fun stories. We'll get to those here in a minute. Let me just check something real quick. All right. We'll start out with our first story, which is a Fox News story. You have to have Fox News, right? You can't have a show without a Fox News clip. McDonald's has been losing money as of late. Yes, the burger giant is on shaky ground. Now, what could possibly bring down the golden arches? Well, for that answer, we turn to our friends over at Fox and Friends.
The Golden Arches reporting a 30% drop in quarterly profits.
Why? Well, it turns out workers' wages might be to blame. Joining us right now, I'm Maria Bartiromo from Fox Business, getting set to do her show right at 9 a.m.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Problem at McDonald's, Maria?
Well, the issue really is this is the implication of raising the minimum wage for certain companies. I mean, something's got to give. The money comes from somewhere. So at some point, a company will say, okay, we have a higher expense base because we're raising the minimum wage. We've got to do something somewhere else. In this case, they're going to automation. They're changing certain jobs to computers.
So it's really biting them in the tail. They were complaining, saying we want more money, and as a result, McDonald's saying, hey, we're gonna lose some of you guys. We're gonna replace you with machines.
Because the fact is it's not just about $10 an hour. It's about $10 an hour plus a benefit package. You know, benefit, vacation, and of course we know the expense of Obamacare. As a result, companies have to do something.
Well, ultimately, though, McDonald's could, you know, I know that the unions would like to see $15 per hour for employees, and the guy who runs it says, I'm okay with $10 an hour. But ultimately, what it comes down to is if there's only a certain, you know, pot of gold they're going to have to raise prices.
Exactly.
And that's not why you go to McDonald's to pay a lot for a hamburger.
That's the thing. Something's got to give somewhere. So it's either fewer workers, it's either automation, it's either more part-time workers relative to full-time, or it's raising prices. Somebody has to pay for it.
I knew it. I knew it. It's those damn hamburglers living it up with their high wages and lavish benefit packages, while the corporate bosses struggle. At least if that's what's going on if you live in the fantasy world of Fox News. You know that minimum wage hike that they're blaming for the drop in McDonald's profits? Yeah, that actually never happened. The real reason McDonald's is losing money is because of increased competition. Yes, competition. From places like Chipotle's. You don't believe me? How about we listen to that socialist union thug, McDonald's CEO Don Thompson. Quote, one of its biggest challenges in the U.S. is long-held perceptions about the freshness and quality of its ingredients. The chain has been fighting to boost sales as people gravitate towards foods they feel are more wholesome. As a result, people have been gravitating to places like Chipotle, which markets its ingredients as being of superior quality. As for the minimum wage, McDonald's will be fine if the minimum wage goes to $10.10 per hour. So it's not as if McDonald's is losing money because they actually pay their workers, which they're actually not because they're still making somewhere around minimum wage. It's that their food really doesn't qualify as food and people don't want to eat it. Thoughts?
I think it's like, of course, it has to be the guy at the bottom. It's not the fact that there's been this documentary called Fast Food Nation. It's also a novel that's spearheaded the whole anti-fast food movement. It's not the fact that Americans are being very, very conscious of the amount of energy that it takes to raise these cows to kill and make burgers. Of course, it has to be the people who are at the bottom, slaving away, dealing with McDonald's bullshit. They're the ones that are at fault. It's ridiculous to even think of something like that. And of course, Fox News, they hate anybody who's not a multi-billionaire in the first place, so you can't really expect anything honorable from them.
Sean?
Okay, so about the Americans being more concerned about like movies and books like Fast Food Nation, I don't really know if that's the case, but what the McDonald's CEO said in particular about Chipotle and a lot of these other fast casual restaurants like Panera Bread, Cadobo, insert other restaurant name because I don't know many of them. Like that is a huge factor, and like it seems like it's more high quality food and it's cheap-ish and you get it pretty quickly like you would at McDonald's. So every advantage that McDonald's had in just its speed seems to be like being overrun by companies like Chipotle, which is ironic because McDonald's is the company that helped Chipotle spread all around the nation before they parted ways. So ha 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 ha. About what the Fox News people said about industries adding more automation to offset labor costs, that's always a thing that's going to happen. And it's something that we always argue about when we talk about the minimum wage. But McDonald's biggest problem is Chipotle, and Chipotle will actually be hit more by the minimum wage increase than McDonald's. So in this weird line of thinking, it would actually be better for McDonald's if the wage went up because they're a bigger company and they could better apportion costs. So, yay, Chipotle, in conclusion.
But I think that, with the raise, Chipotle is kind of seen as a healthier alternative to McDonald's. So in areas like, there are areas that do force companies to raise their minimum wage, Seattle, for instance. But I think that knowing that you have a company that's going to pay you better will encourage you to want to take that job in the first place. It encourages people to work. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever worked in a food service industry, but sometimes the food you're making is the only food that you can eat at the time. So you're spending a lot of money there. You're bringing a lot of people in. It may, in the short run, hurt Chipotle to raise minimum wage for them because they're smaller, but it brings somewhat of a better attraction to that company if they know that, or if people who are conscious about the thing know that, okay, they're also paying their people very good wages. That means maybe my food will be made with love or something crazy like that. And plus, it's a healthier option than the McNugget that's probably not even real meat.
Yeah, and Chipotle has avocados, so those are superfoods and obviously healthier. And to your point, I think In-N-Out Burger, which qualifies as a fast casual, pays their employees better because they want to get higher quality like employees. So it could work for Chipotle, and like I don't see, unless the prices significantly increase, a big decrease in Chipotle's fan base or customer base. So it could end up working for them, but on paper, McDonald's is better suited to absorb that increase.
All right, can we get to Tom? Tom, what's your take on this?
I'm surprised nobody mentioned the excuse me, the attack on Obamacare there too. I mean, I know it's about the minimum wage, but everything. They also a little veiled attack on Obamacare, and I'm kind of disappointed in Fox News. They didn't take the opportunity to blame Michelle Obama for her, healthy eating thing too. They're not on a good ball here. It's this class warfare thing which they like to trot out, and it's all your fault because you're poor. You're just not working hard enough. We've heard that all before, but I think they're losing their edge. They could have gone harder on Obamacare and the First Lady. What's up with that?
If you're gonna make something up, if you're gonna make up the fact the point, or the talking point of it's the minimum wage going up, which it actually didn't. That's been driving down McDonald's profits. You would at least think that they would go all out and be like, it's also Obamacare.
Well, I mean, it was there, but I mean that wasn't the argument. It was, oh well, these people, who these people think they are? They want this. This is my crappy English accent here that nobody really wants to see, by the way. But who do these people think they are? They want this whole thing with the minimum wage and higher wages. And no, get back to the salt mine. Go work harder. I'm just, I don't know. This argument with them making it, I always get disturbed when people who make more than regular folk make this bad argument, and it's Fox News. I mean, really? We know their playbook at this point, and it's I don't know.
It's tired and overused, and they're, once again, it just, making things up, kind of their thing, and
yeah,
it's predictable now. Like we all kind of knew this was, like, we all knew that this was bullshit watching it. Like, they could actually have pointed towards, I mean, they did, but they also didn't even use a real scenario. I think that what they did was set up a straw man argument and tried to pass it off as true.
I know why McDonald's is less profitable.
Why is that, Sean?
Ebola.
I think that's a good place to leave off.
I'll second that.
So we go from terrible fast food to Canada, to terrible tweets. Terrible tweets. I'm sure we were all shocked by the recent shooting in Canada, which left a Canadian service member dead. On Twitter, the same day that happened, Chrissy Teigen, who was a supermodel, had tweeted out, quote, "Active shooting in Canada," or as we call it in America, Wednesday. That, of course, didn't go over well with Fox News or Twitter, especially Fox News host Andrea Tanneros, who had some rather harsh words for Ms. Teigen. Let's watch.
You won't believe this. Some tweets during the chaos in Ottawa causing a lot of controversy, and those tweets still continuing right now. Sports Illustrated cover model Chrissy Teigen. She's the one on the right, taking to Twitter. She's married to John Legend, by the way. She's saying on Twitter, active shooting in Canada, or as we call it in America, Wednesday.
But Chrissy Teigen is known for, obviously, her lovely bottom and her food Instagram pictures. Yeah. She should stick to that. This is the problem when models start to talk. It plays into that dumb model stereotype because it's too soon for her to weigh in.
Teigen is obviously known for her lovely bottom and food Instagram pictures, and she should stick to that. Yes, sage advice from Andrea Tanneros. Notice how it's always too soon to talk about a shooting? That's what she said, right? It's too soon. It's too soon. And sure, it may be insensitive to Canadians, but it's also 100% true. It seems like we do have a shooting here every week, possibly every Wednesday here in America, but somehow she's a terrible, horrible person for pointing that out. And of course, along with Fox News' commendation of the tweet, Twitter also went nuts over this, with people tweeting death threats at her. Classy. Real classy, Twitter. What are your thoughts?
So this story has everything that I hate about the media and human people. I hate tragedy vultures. These are people who wait for tragedy so that they can attach their political point to it without it being there. And I also hate fake outrage, which seems like what happened. Yeah, she's a model, and she has a very nice bottom, for the record. But yeah, she's a model, and like she has an opinion. But do you really need to like put it out at that exact moment? Like she said, active shooting, so she put it out like while the story was breaking. Like, haha, America. And then people getting outraged, like, oh my God, it's so irresponsible of this model to have an opinion. Like, she's a model. She could have an opinion. Every American can have an opinion. There's no reason to be, like, amazingly outraged at it. Like, you could say that she's crass for, like, quickly jumping to that. But other than that, like, it's no big crime. Like, nobody was really harmed by her tweet. And, like, in the way that nobody was really harmed by any tweet ever. So, yeah, I hate everybody in this story. And on top of that, Jeff, facts don't have seems like at the end of them. So I'm just saying.
I think it's comical that a woman who's calling somebody dumb, and the reason why they shouldn't talk is because models are dumb, is working for a company and a broadcast network that relies heavily upon putting out the least common denominator with women, showing the dumb blondes or the dumb people with skirts in order to bring in views. So it's like you're the last person to talk shit because your whole paycheck rests upon you having a pretty face and saying something that is astonishingly stupid, so that some old 47-year-old somewhere can get his last jollies without taking a fucking pill. So it's like, calm down. Stop hating on a model, because just because you are a model doesn't mean that you need to live the rest of your life silent. That's only when you're in magazines. And it's like, I hated that comment so much, because it's like, which one do you want to be, the pot or the fucking kettle? Because for damn sure, try wearing a business suit on your next fucking show. I guarantee you wouldn't be able to do it or be taken seriously.
Oh, and Haven, one thing, like, not 47. The average age of a Fox News viewer is like 68. They're much older than that.
Actually, Jeff, it's 69.
Is it 69?
Let's go to top.
Are you sure? Are you sure, Sean? Anyway,
No, not for nothing. Jeff, not for nothing. I am not a supermodel, and I do not have an airbrushed ass. But I would like to say that we just had a shooting, literally a school shooting, that really hasn't been talked about except maybe when it happened on my show. So she was only 2 days late. I mean, that's all, 2 days late. So you could get all but hurt, Sean, about how it's, trolling the tragedy to make your point or whatever. But obviously, Captain Obvious here her point isn't wrong. 2 days later, what was it? There's a school shooting in America where 2 people but we have phony outrage about the long-legged one who, as soon as she gets a lot of hair on those legs, she's out. I'm just saying.
They have waxing for that, and 2 days late is extremely serious. She was actually 2 days early. 2 days early is totally fine, but 2 days late could lead to a tragedy.
Well, early warning system. What is this? A home pregnancy test?
Well, remember she was tweeting. Remember, she tweeted it as the issue with Canada was going down, the shooting in Canada. So that happened back on Wednesday. So no, she wasn't too late. She wasn't too early. We just so happened to have a shooting today as well as we're reporting this one. So how's that?
This makes me all. This is all the more makes me all the more glad that I slept through Wednesday. This is more, like Sean said, fake Fox News outrage, because that's about their only good quality of what they're good at. Nobody does fake outrage like Fox News.
Can I just say, though, as a programming note, I prefer, and I agree with Haven, like the point about saying that, oh, she's a model and she shouldn't talk or make an opinion known because because it proves a dumb model stereotype. No, actually trying to engage in the process is disproving it. Like, just because you disagree with somebody doesn't make them dumb, unless we're on this show. But that was supposed to be hilarious. But in all seriousness, just because you disagree with somebody doesn't make them dumb. If you want to get on her for again being a little early, talking about it during the show, that's totally fine. But just this random oh my God, she's so awful because she tweeted something out. People tweet things out all the time. It's 140 characters. You type them really quick or whatever. But the fact that she's following the news and she's engaged in the process is a good thing. So I hate the fact that they had to demean her for her career, but everything else, if you want to get on her for timing and all that, there's enough hate for me to go around. And finally, in conclusion, people shoot on Wednesday because you're too far away from Friday.
And also, I think it plays into the narrative that Fox News is obviously trying to show a rose-colored picture of what we're going through. It's true. There's a reason why that tweet is true. It's because we are a heavily gun-centered culture. We're living in a time where we're drastically opposed to one another. We don't want to talk. We don't want to communicate. We're all about fucking doing the most violent action to solve the simplest problems. And to Fox News, they're okay with that because they don't live in a neighborhood where their children could possibly get shot. And they don't live in a neighborhood where they're going to have to deal with their neighbors trying to come over and shoot them because they're playing too much, weird music or it's too loud or some shit. We're living in a fucked up time now. And it bothers me that they want to push this narrative just so that more guns can be bought. I'm not against guns. I'm not against people going out and hunting and everything like that, but we have to understand that there's a reason why so many people are dying every fucking day. And it's not just a race thing or a class thing, but it's a gun thing. It's a violence thing. We're a violent people, and we're hurting each other because we don't give a fuck about each other anymore. And Fox News is all about that.
And by the way, supermodel stories always better than Ebola. So good on Fox for that.
And I think it is kind of telling how people get more offended over a tweet than people being shot all the time in America. That's a bit telling to me. Ready to move on? Are we?
Amen.
Texas. We go to Texas. Sometimes here we tend to enjoy picking on people living in Texas for all the crazy stuff that seems to happen there. But a recent story out of Think Progress shows that a lot of the stuff that they want to do that we hear about actually has a lot of opposition to it. An example of that is the new proposed textbooks that Texas officials are trying to put into the schools. Now, there's been a bit of backlash to these new books. And the first question you would ask is why? Well, what's wrong with these books? Well, here's a few examples. An elementary school social studies textbook contained a section that asserted that scientists believe the Earth is experiencing a natural warming trend and that the Earth would have some cooler years, and then everything will even out. Don't worry, kids. It'll be okay. Don't worry about that oil rig catching fire on there in the Gulf. That's fine. It's just capitalism. Go back to your studies. Another example of climate denialism in these new books is the part where, in a 6th grade geography book, that said that scientists just don't agree about the cause on climate change. Really. Quote, "Is this another natural warming cycle like so many cycles that have occurred in the past? Or is climate change anthropogenic, caused by human activity? You decide. What is it? Is it natural or is it man-made? It's sort of like a choose-your-own-adventure for oil tycoons." So what are Texans doing to fight back? Well, they gathered about 24,000 signatures from actual Texas residents and had them delivered to the State Board of Education. Now, the reason I find this fight important is because Texas has the largest public school system in the country, and at this moment maintains some pretty strict standards for textbooks. Because of the publishers tend to look to Texas for making decisions about what they put into their textbooks for other states to use, it seems to be pretty important. This whole thing seems to be really important if you actually give a crap about education. This is why you see conservative politicians and moneyed interests start to take a look at the education system itself. Because if you can get them at a young age, you can influence them with your propaganda and teach them to ignore scientific facts. Now, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Start with you, Tom.
I think it's funny. I spiked a story about how they're talking about Jody Heiss was on the air talking about how public schools are indoctrination camps right now for liberals and progressives. I find it highly ironic that while the conservatives are running that Common Core meme throughout, that they're trying to spike things like climate change and everything else from textbooks in Texas now because, oh no, the scary science and logic will, I don't know, make their heads explode. I just, this is, typical conservator nonsense because they're afraid of a little science and math, and we might find out that no, the Earth really isn't 6,028 years old. It's a lot older than that. She's probably not that happy about being told her age either.
Avon?
All right, so one of the main things that they're trying to do is to change what the motive for slavery or for the Civil War was, from it being about slavery to some type of bullshit, watered down economic or state rights reason, which I hate that argument in the first place. And I just so happen to come across a first-hand source. It's written by the former governor of he's the former governor of South Carolina, named James Henry Hammond during this time, and he published a seminal book arguing that enslaved laborers were happier, fitter, and better looked after than their free counterparts. He even went as far as to suggest that if they could continue slavery, to bring in the Irish and Scottish residents of the South under or bring them into the slavery institution, because it made life so much better for blacks that it would probably make life so much better for the poor, lower class whites that were in the area as well. This was about slavery. It was they're trying to whitewash history and push everybody who's ever existed outside of being a white male out of it. And I can't understand why they would want to do that, because you would want your kids to learn that other people's heritage was of high struggle. You would want to appreciate the turmoil that this country went through and was able to overcome, and not just water it down over, oh, it was just states' rights. I mean, don't worry about what exactly they wanted the right to do or how they were pissed off that they didn't have enough delegates to be pro-slavery in the Union or anything like that. No. Let's not look at that. Let's just look at it being state rights. It's like we're dumbing down our kids with this bullshit, and we're making it easier for kids to be ignorant of each other and ignorant of their own heritage and their own things that they need to be proud of. There are heroes in the story of the Civil War and in the story of America that show that we can exemplify what it is that we fucking keep saying that we love: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that shit. But we can't do that if we're busy trying to brainwash our children into doing this narrative that's very, very white, very, very rich, very anti-intellectual, and expect us to be competitive to the rest of the fucking world.
Okay, so, like, I don't want to, like, contradict anything that Haven just said. Like, but in general, I don't mind, like, adding in the other factors that led to the Civil War, but, like, you can't ignore the overarching theme of the Civil War, which happened to be slavery, and the fact that a lot of southern states believed that the prevention of slavery to the territories would have let slavery die in their own states, and there's basically the Civil War was a lot about slavery, and if you try to remove that from the textbooks, then you're totally wrong, and I agree with Haven 100% on that. As for the people in this story that are trying to fight to get the climate change stuff out of or into the Texas books, I mean, good on them. I'm glad that they're doing that. But this has actually a lot more to do with how textbooks work in this country, because Texas is so big. If they have a specific demand, it ends up going inside all the textbooks that we go through. Like Jeff talked about how they're the largest public school system in the entire nation, and that gives them like affirmative power, and it's the same affirmative power that California has when they mandate higher fuel standards for their cars, because they're such a large share of the market. The companies make more money by only producing one. So like if these people in Texas fail, then other school districts have to demand, and if it means paying a little bit more money, they have to pay a little bit more money to get more accurate textbooks, so that they don't fall for Texas's weird issues with history and science.
Yeah, like those are some good points, and you both bring up a lot about the motivations of why, you know, of the people that are trying to change around these textbooks. Obviously, there's a political motive. There's an economic incentive as well, you know, to change these around, and that's why that's why it's so important. I mean, we also had the same issue happen in Jefferson County. I forget what state. What's the state in there? Jefferson County. Well, the Jefferson County schools recently tried doing the same thing, and they've had their textbooks changed as well. And a lot of students, a lot of teachers protested that and ultimately lost. And we don't want the same thing to happen in Texas because they have such a large share of the market. And you're right, Sean, they you know, the whole problem with how textbooks work in America, I mean, that needs to be addressed as well so that we can actually have accurate books. I remember going through high school and, you know, going through the history books, and then after I graduated, watching history stuff and learning about history stuff that I never learned in high school. And I was like, well, why didn't our books have this kind of stuff in it? What happened? Why didn't we learn about this? Why didn't I have this information available? It would have been nice to fucking know. And part of that goes to Haven's point of the whitewashing of history.
Right, and the whitewashing of history is a serious problem. What I'm actually slightly more concerned about is the critical thinking aspect. I don't know if you guys remember this from when you were in school, but at the end of every chapter, especially in books like history, they had a critical thinking aspect. So if you had like exercises in there and the critical thinking part that was like draw a defensive position for some southern states that doesn't have to do with slavery, like just to get a kid thinking, Like that's different from changing like the actual motivations of like why the Civil War started. And what I don't understand is why Texas textbooks would want to pin the Civil War on states' rights, because then you're like you're blaming one of the most important or one of the most horrible wars in American history on a concept that you're trying to promote today. So like it's weird, it's unusual, and I wouldn't do it, but like I'm actually in favor of more critical thinking exercises in general, and like I may have not given the best example, but
well, if that's the case, Sean, then you are just opposed to the GOP of Texas. They had a whole platform that was very clear that they are very much against critical thinking in schools. They don't want kids to think critically. I mean, your example, I could appreciate trying to get kids to see the other side, to identify certain things, because that helps you to understand the pathos of certain decisions. But that's not what they want. They want you to take your fucking Kool-Aid and just die slowly and silently. And it's not just about slavery, but they're also they've already wiped out the importance of the workers' movement and the use of unions, so that when they take all that shit away, no kid is going to remember that that was important. No one's going to miss it because no one learned that that was an important thing. And that's what they are doing. They are pushing little by little laws to take away your rights as far as a worker, take away your rights as far as education. They're trying to slow you down for whatever religious beliefs they have when it comes to science. But then I guarantee you 30, 40 years from now, when America's at the bottom of the fucking barrel, they're not going to blame their shitty policies for the fact that we don't have any innovative minds anymore. They're going to blame the quote-unquote immigrants that have the education that we didn't get.
Hey,
to your point, hold on. To your point about the workers' movement, the thing is erasing the workers' movement is stupid and it's childish. Explaining how a lot of the unionization actually promoted racism, and in fact, one of the reasons that Japanese immigrants on the West Coast were interned during World War II was because unions felt like they had too much cheap labor and that they were too talented in certain fields. So like if you go into like the nuances of history and like explain that it is murky and that a lot of causes that we support today or don't support today were much murkier and much like less clear back in the day, like kids would actually do this crazy thing called learning something. So like getting rid of history is dumb. Teaching actual history is like will lead kids to discover their own positions, and they might discover yours if you're only concerned about like political motivations.
But see, here's the thing. The reason they want this, we're missing the point, I think, or we're painting too broad a brush on it. It's really easy. They want you so dumbed down, and Sean, to your point, they don't want you to think critically. Because if you think critically, you could get this absolute terrorism bad. Muslims, go after them. Guns, good. Arm me. You know, you have this absolute total, no nuance, no thinking about it. We know exactly who we're going to attack. We know exactly which way to run. We know exactly what to be hysterical about. And that falls into the dynamic, and that falls into the whole dumbing down of society. That's why they don't want critical thinking, because that way it's easier to control an entire populace. Oh, magical sky god, let's all believe in him, because when the rapture comes, we're going to go up on Jesus' jet, you know? And it's easier to keep people dumbed down and just believing, and oh, you're giving me $3 an hour? Thank you, sir. And that's where we're headed. And Haven, your point about the time frame, I give it 10 to 20 years. You're being too generous on time.
And one more thing too, to sort of add into this about critical thinking. I think I recently saw an article showing how the lack of critical thinking being taught in our schools, and what's being taught in our schools and how it's being taught, is more or less it's teaching children to work in an economy that no longer exists, and that's putting us backwards as well. It's that top-down authoritarian sort of education that leads to a top-down authoritarian, don't innovate, don't think, you do what I tell you to, you make the part exactly to my specifications, when you're coming to mass manufacturing. And those kinds of jobs, while they are filtering back to the United States, that's not a majority of our workforce anymore. We need more innovative people. We need people who know how to critically think. And, changing textbooks and doing all this stuff and teaching the way that we're doing to try to eliminate that critical thinking, that's a detriment to our country.
But Jeff, the whole reason they want that is so when you get the crappiest job at the cheapest price, you'll be so thrilled to get that because you could maybe just barely scrape by that you won't bitch. Oh, you'll want that big screen TV, but you can't,
Yeah, we know their motivations and why that thing is encouraged, but it does ultimately hurt America in the long run. And that's what they're lacking, is a longer vision, I guess, something that's more than short-term profits and short-term return. But that's just me.
Chinese exceptionalism, people.
All right. So let's go and go over to our next story, which is a little bit of hazing in high school. That's always fun, isn't it? I mean, not for the people getting hazed, as you'll find out. What does the Bush administration and Sayreville High School football team have in common? Apparently, they both like to waterboard people. Yes, the small Philadelphia football team has had their season canceled, and seven of its members could face criminal charges over possible waterboarding of other players and forcing them to perform lewd acts as part of their hazing initiation rituals. Now, according to Superintendent David Weitzel, rookies were allegedly forced to touch other players' genitals with their heads covered in towels. Okay. They were also allegedly led into showers into what players considered a form of waterboarding. Now, local police department chief James Donnelly doesn't think the shower incidents were necessarily waterboarding, and that the players certainly hadn't committed a crime. But nonetheless, Donnelly and the local police department are reopening the investigation into some of these incidences. Superintendent David Weitzel told the Intelligencer, quote, preseason hazing is a long-standing tradition at the school. Yeah, great tradition. But, quote, appropriate team-building activities cannot be permitted to spiral out of control and to become hazing. Well, good job, I think. But hey, the team did do something about it. During their first investigation, 5 coaches of the varsity and junior varsity teams were suspended for failing to properly monitor the team. Oh, we weren't watching you good enough, and obviously you're going to do what you're going to do, so that's our fault. We didn't watch you, so we got suspended. Well, we're back in the job now. Great job. Now, what do you guys think about this whole thing and the general idea of, or general problem and issue of hazing in high school and in college sports?
Can I take this one, Jeff?
Sure.
As someone who walks into a room feeling that, the tide is against me, I take this actually very personal. I don't like online hazing or teasing, anything like that. I try not to do it myself. When I catch myself, I'm my biggest critic. But I was looking down in the comment section of this. I find it sad that everybody's all butthurt that the season's been canceled. That's where the anger is. The anger is not at the hazing. The anger is not at what these kids have been doing. The anger is that the season's been canceled. And again, that actually goes back to our previous story of the dumbing down of society and why I think Haven was being way too generous with her time frame. And I'm done.
Haven?
I think, first of all, who the fuck taught these kids how to waterboard? Where did that come from? What happened to wedgies and swirlies? because maybe this is me feeling like an old fart. Secondly, Tom, you're right. It is interesting that the anger is at the season being taken away. But then again, I'm not surprised because when football players rape girls, people get mad at the girls. So if they can do that, they're going to get pissed off at this too. I don't know why. I'm not really a big football fan, but people in this country love football. It's almost a fucking religion, especially in the South. And it's like, this doesn't, there's merit to playing a sport. There's merit to learning teamwork and all that good stuff. But it's just amazing that we don't want to teach our kids that. Like, we don't want to teach our kids what it's like to have sportsmanship and integrity. Like, those words don't even compute anymore. And we're helping to promote these kids to go out there and just play ball and not give a shit about anything else. And that harms them in the long run. A lot of these kids want to go pro. A lot of these kids want to go and do things where this type of behavior is not going to benefit them. In all actuality, they might lose their job. And they're not going to, nobody's going to force them to focus on education to protect themselves from that. And to protect themselves from the God knows how many fucking concussions they're going to have to deal with later in life. So it's like, I guess the overall theme for the past couple of stories is that we are fucking over our kids in so many inventive ways that it's just mind-boggling that we let this happen. Like, these kids need to be disciplined. They need to learn that doing this douchebaggery stuff will not be tolerated.
Well, just to point out your point, Haven, and to amplify that, somebody was the greatest generation. Well, somebody has to be the shittiest generation. And apparently, we're making it happen.
Yeah, you're right. We have a really big problem with putting sports over everything else. Like, sports are fine on their own. Sports are fine when it comes to, like you said, team building and learning how to be competitive and also learning how to be a good sportsman about things. But I think a lot of people take these things way too seriously as far as this is a career now. This is an industry. With a lot of cuts to schools, for example, cuts in education, a lot of schools have had to invest in their football team ticket sales in order to recoup some of their money. So as soon as somebody's paycheck is on the line, that's when things start to get more and more serious. Right, and you see this with some high schools, and you definitely see it with college football being a multi-million-dollar, possibly billion-dollar industry, and especially with the NFL being a billion-dollar industry. And that's why people don't take these kind of incidences as seriously. That's why Ray Rice can beat the fuck out of his girlfriend and only get suspended for a little while, and then come back right in the team and continue to play football. It's because we put the football, or we put the sports above everything else, above human decency, and we just put it on a pedestal. We put it on a trophy, to be sort of ironic, I guess, and that's a real issue. It gets in the way of actually addressing real issues. Sean? No, Sean? No, Sean? All right, well, then we'll have to move on.
Can I just... Jeff, can I just...
I got it. Like, to your point,
fine.
Schools are
fine.
Spending way too much money on their high school programs and all that. But there's a reason for that. And that has to do with... Tom, explain.
Tom, go ahead. You had a point you could say? Apparently Sean missed the entire discussion, and because he was out to lunch.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna haze you later.
Yep, get him later.
And the worst part is, I don't know if anybody heard that because my mic is going completely, my little on off for my mic is going completely batty over here. So I don't know what people are hearing, what people aren't, you know. So,
sounds fine to me. As far as Sean goes,
okay.
you can just give him Ebola.
No.
No, I want to keep them, so there's no problem.
In all seriousness, Jeff is right. A lot of high schools depend on the revenue that they get from their football programs and all that, but that ultimately depends on the people. And in like states like Texas, Alabama, and a lot of southern states, their like number one thing is professional football or college football, and then high school football, and that just has to do with our obsession of sport and all that. So like they're putting money into their football program, yes, but it's a reflection of the people who would rather have a solid football program than a solid educated youth group.
Yeah, and like let me be honest. Like I have my bias, okay, because when I was going to school, we had this. At my senior year, they built this gigantic stadium at my school, while the computers in the computer lab, I swear, were like the Tandy green screens. Like, you remember those things, right? They're just computers that were old as fuck for the computer labs, and yet brand new football stadium.
No,
My anger comes from on this story.
Jeff, I'll one up you on that. My school had started off with their nifty computers were Apple IIe's when I went to school. So I think I win.
Yeah,
and
but
that was a parochial Catholic school. Yeah, I know, but Apple IIe's, really? What the hell could you do on that but play Pong?
Play more Pong. Play Oregon Trail and then die from cholera.
Yo, I love Oregon Trail. Like, I know that's
yeah,
not
so do I.
really important, but Jeff said it. That shit is fucking awesome, and I remember that in elementary school. But yeah, that happens a lot in a lot of poor districts in New Jersey, that they build like really like elite college level facilities, and a lot of that has to do with money that's sent to these school districts with no accountability. So like I think we should look at the administrators and like all these people in the schools. Like Jeff, I don't know what the situation was of your school district, but usually when you have a big stadium in a school that's failing, it has a lot to do with state money instead of local money being infused into the system. And there's like a lack of ability to track that money.
All right. One more story until we go to Haven. We're going to save the best for last. Right?
Awesome.
So we're gonna save the best for last, and we're gonna go to a little bit of a lighter story, a little bit more fun, and this has to do with Halloween too, as well. So we're getting into the season. There's nothing scarier to our moneyed elite than poor people donning masks and demanding you give them free stuff. No, I'm not talking about fears of being robbed by thugs. I'm talking about Halloween. Yes, nothing stokes fear and anger quite like poor kids coming into your neighborhood. Just look at a Dear Prudence article posted recently in Slate. Quote, I live in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in my country, but on one of the more modest streets, mostly doctors, lawyers, and family business owners. A few blocks away are billionaires, families with famous last names, media moguls, etc. I have noticed that on Halloween, what seems like 75% of the trick-or-treaters are clearly not from this neighborhood. You don't say. Kids arrive in overflowing cars from less fortunate areas. I feel this is inappropriate. Halloween isn't a social service or a charity in which I have to buy candy for the less fortunate children. Obviously, this makes me feel like a terrible person. That's because you are. Because what's the big deal about making less fortunate kids happy on a holiday? But it just bugs me. Because we already pay more than enough taxes towards actual social services. Should Halloween be a neighborhood activity? Or is it legitimately a free-for-all in which people hunt down the best candy grounds for their kids? You know the reason that it makes you sound like a terrible person? It's because you do sound like a terrible person. Or at least you act like it. First of all, no one is forcing this person to buy candy. You can be that guy or girl that shuts off your lights during trick-or-treating hours. Make it look like nobody's home. Yeah, you're still an asshole, but at least you're not that bad of an asshole, right? And this is a good example of why a lot of regular people can't stand the super wealthy. Not all of them, but just people like this that are like, oh, please. Why do I have to give candy to this rabble? Can't they just go back to their food stamps? Seriously, it's bad enough that I pay for them to be alive and to share my air. Now they have to foul up my streets? Seriously? What are we going to do about these unwashed masses coming around here once a year? I get to see the Fox News headline on this. Halloween creates dependency. Haven't seen it yet, but it's coming. I can almost guarantee it. Now, what's funny about this is that Prudence replies on this and sort of ends up her reply with this complete epic smackdown. She writes, "Your wine makes me kind of wish that people from the actual poor side of town come this year not with scary costumes, but with real pitchforks. Stop being callous and miserly and go to Costco, you cheapskate. And get enough candy to fill the bags of the kids who come one day a year to marvel at how the 1% live." Ouch. Sean?
Yeah, if you're too lazy to decorate tiny humans on Halloween, you could just not decorate your house and not open your doors when they come knocking. Or you feel like that one idiot person I found every year when I was a kid who leaves a bowl of candy with a nice note and basically I take the entire bowl, and that's what every first kid who sees that does, who's not with his parents. So like there are ways that you could avoid like giving kids candy on Halloween, but like there's no reason to be such a dick about it. Like, so what? Oh my God, I have to spend like almost $40. Like, and that's like a way overestimate how much it costs to give kids on Halloween. I have to spend $40 to give away candy to children on Halloween. Like, they're spending more than that, or their parents are spending more than that on their costumes. So it's not a wealth redistribution program. It's just a nice thing to do for certain kids. And if you're really, really that upset about it, throw some razor blades in there. No mind. Or at least some.
Reject that, obviously.
I love the suggestion of just harm the kids. If you're really that pissed off about it, just throw some fire at them. Why on your?
No, here's the way to get people to not want to trick or treat at your house. Be the asshole who hands out Bibles or granola. Nobody likes the person that gives out granola.
I actually like granola, but like I get your point, Jeff.
My thing is, what happened? When did being the motherfucker who just turned off all your lights during the trick-or-treating time not become sufficient enough? Like, I love Halloween. I don't know if you guys can tell from my outfit.
We can tell, Eeyore. We can tell.
But I fucking love Halloween. And I used to grow up in a neighborhood that didn't have the wealthiest of people in it. Sometimes you go to the rich neighborhood because the rich people go all out. They have the coolest decorations. Sometimes they literally try to scare the shit out of you, too. So it's like a mini haunted house. Like, it's fun. And why wouldn't you want to bring horrific joy to children? Like, what fucking Scrooge? Like, what do you have? What devil did you have to talk to sell your fucking happiness and soul to be like, fuck giving candy to kids? Who doesn't love giving candy to kids? I mean, everybody. Even nice people, pedophiles, everybody loves giving candy to children. So it's like, what the fuck is your problem, bro? Like, and if you really, just like Tom said, if you really don't, then don't participate. It's not like there's like some Halloween mandate, even though there should be. It's not like there's some Halloween mandate that forces you to give kids candy, but it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to get to know your neighbors. It's a fun thing to get to know the people that are in your neighborhood, to get to know the kids, so that maybe if Timmy or Sally gets abducted, you can remember, oh shit, Timmy was the skeleton last Christmas. Like, it's a way to fucking connect with the people that you live with. And I think that's one of the major things that a lot of the wealthy individuals of this country and around the world don't like doing. They don't like getting to know the people that they live with. They don't want to know them. Other people that live around them are beneath them, or they won't understand, or they don't have any value. And I think that's the overall message that this guy is trying to send, is that those people are nothing to me. I'm going to spend my Halloween out in Dubai somewhere at a Four Seasons. Why should I waste my time with these children? And it's like, I mean, I feel sorry for him because it like isolates you, and it just makes your life fucking boring.
Right, and there, this guy's complaint is that it's not the kids in our community. It's just random poor kids. It's those poors coming out of the poor area, coming to our place, which we should, by all means, we should have like a gate and a fucking moat or something to keep those kids out, because they're not part of our community. We don't want to get to know them. They're just rabble. They're just, why should I give that? They should be happy with their food stamps. And that's it. That's what makes them a terrible person.
Yeah, and
Jeff,
they're going to be wearing costumes. Like, you won't even recognize the riffraff.
They're going to have shit costumes on, be honest. And I just want to make a point, two things about this story that I think of instantly with this story. I think of Mr. Burns releasing the hounds on the kids. I automatically think of that with this story. And second, if this Miss Prudence, Dear Prudence, was a little shorter letter, it could have been sent to Pat Robertson's 700 Club and would have been perfect for it right before Halloween. Why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this. And the third and final point, they could be like the people in California who protested the illegal aliens, right? Or undocumented immigrants, rather. They could go and protest. They could have a rich people protest Halloween with the riffraff. No riffraff signs. Thanks Obama for the riffraff. I could see this like new Tea Party thing taking over.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say something somewhat controversial to at least this crowd and be like, I'm not buying it that all the rich people on that part of town are actually like that. I think this guy is probably one of the few that are just is just that much of an asshole to be like, why do I have to give these candy out to these kids in the riffraff from across the road? Seriously. I don't think that they're all like I don't think that everybody's like that. I think there are, like what Haven was saying. Sometimes the kids in the neighborhood love to go to the rich people areas because they go all out. They put up decorations and they just get into the holiday because they love it. And it's like, come to my door. I got candy. I got decorations. It's going to be fun. We'll have a Halloween party later on. Maybe your parents can come. Something like that,
Jeff,
not everybody's a dick.
Yeah.
For your theory to work, though, Jeff, I want the rich people to stand up for the poor people. Where is my 99% saying we will bring Halloween to you? That's not. I don't see that happening. I don't see Dear Prudence getting some throwback or the comments section, right? So I'm sorry. I don't think it holds water. You're trying, Jeff, but.
Perhaps I'm being too overly optimistic in this day and age. But I'd like to think there's some humanity in people left, that there are good people out there. I'm an optimist. My glass is half full. And apparently Tom's glass is full of piss. All right. All right, for our last segment, I'm going to throw it over to you, Haven. You've got something that you'd like to present to us about gentrification. Gentrify me.
Yes. Well, Gawker put out an article about this San Francisco lesbian bar called the Lexington Club, and it's one of the first lesbian bars that were put out on that side of the country. And unfortunately, the Lexington Club, or the Lex as the locals like to call it, had to shut down, and it's largely due to the gentrification of the area. Now, when people talk about gentrification, it usually focuses on somewhat of a race aspect, you know, a lot of poor minorities getting pushed out. But in this case, it shows that the gentrification that's happening in San Francisco is so dire that historical buildings and venues are shutting down because of what's going on. Now, in San Francisco, they've had a huge tech boom. Companies like Facebook, Google, all of them have been coming in, and mostly because that area is very rich in culture, it's very rich in technology and all of that, and then a lot of people want to follow the footsteps of gentlemen like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who were the first ones to come into Silicon Valley and start their millions. And because of that, everything is skyrocketing. So I'm pretty sure, you know, there are articles out there about how the fixed rate rents are now getting done away with. A lot of landlords are shooting up rent prices so that they can take in more money. In the article, it states that the average income now is $1 million. So when you have all that money in that area, a lot of people don't want to just keep things the way that they are. They want to go where the money is. And that is at the expense of a lot of poor people who have lived in these areas for decades at a certain rent price, or in this case, the Lexington Club, which has been there for decades to provide a venue for the LGBT community to meet and congregate and have a good time with each other. And it's just been rather unfortunate.
Definitely. Like, I can see. I mean, I have a few friends that live over in San Francisco, and it's no doubt that things have becoming incredibly hard to afford, and so it is really sad to see that this continues. I mean, it continues to push people out that are, you know, of those lower income into the further and further reaches of the cities, and now that things, you know, they're unable to access that city center. You know, it's pushing people out. Who, you said that they came for the culture. Well, who made the culture? Who is that culture? It's the very people that the money is pushing out, and that's sad to see.
Yes, very. And this was literally the last lesbian bar. And I've visited San Francisco, and I had the fortune of going to the Lex and enjoying that time. And even when I was there, which was a couple of years ago, it was kind of already dying out because a lot of people and a lot of the people in the area were moving away from San Francisco because they can't afford to live there anymore, and they're moving into Oakland, which that in and of itself has its own ramifications and cleansing out of the culture that's in Oakland, which is very, very much distinct away from San Francisco. So just the fact that it's true that they went for the culture, but the thing is, a lot of the people that are there aren't invested in the culture, and that's a problem with gentrification overall throughout all of the major cities that are facing this. A lot of people go to Harlem because they love the culture there. A lot of people have moved to Baltimore because they love the history there, but none of those people are really invested in maintaining it and growing it, and that usually gives way to those cultures dying out or being changed into like some corporate, you know, selling tool. You can see that with New Orleans. You know, Mardi Gras is it's nothing like how Mardi Gras used to be 30, 40 years ago. It's very, very privatized, very commercialized, and you lose a lot of the flavor that made those major events what they were.
Right. You lose what makes it special, and you know it becomes money. It becomes a market to be exploited, and once you do that to certain things, it loses what made it special.
Yeah,
Can I play devil's advocate? Can I? Sean, go ahead in the May. I want to make.
No, I was gonna say, like, when a lot of people say that they go to San Francisco for the culture, or like a more regional term for me is they go to Brooklyn for the culture. They're really not going for the culture. Like, they might like some of the old buildings or something like that, but they're really going to be close to an economic nerve center. And, like, that's the real reason they're going to San Francisco. So, like, the people will say that they love San Francisco for X, Y, and Z reasons, but if Silicon Valley was in Oregon, they'd all be in Portland. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's really not really about the culture. And I get your point about people who've lived there for a long time and businesses that have been there for a long time, like having to move over to Oakland and then pushing them away. But that seems like it's sort of like a natural progression in society, and it sucks, and I would hate to be forced out of where I live, which is kind of going to happen eventually because there's no way I'm going to be able to afford to stay in like this part of New York for very long. But it's just like a part of the way things work, and like we're seeing it in places like Brooklyn, we're seeing it in places like San Francisco, and eventually it will happen to Oakland. Like, the middle class people from San Francisco will move to Oakland, and then quote unquote upper class people will move to Oakland because San Francisco is too crowded. Like, it's just something that will always continue to happen, and it kind of sucks. But
true. That's very true, Sean. But my biggest problem with, I'm not totally adverse to change, but my biggest problem is we are completely capable of maintaining history when we give a fuck about it. I live in Virginia, and there is a wealth of history here, especially because of Thomas Jefferson. So a lot of the things that Thomas Jefferson has done has been preserved. A lot of the things that certain Confederate major figures of history have been preserved. But other people who are equally as important, in my view, or have done an equal amount of influence in our history and the direction of our country, those people get fallen away. And for me personally, as a lesbian, seeing this happen in San Francisco is devastating to me because I mean it's really hard to get LGBT history outside of Googling it or going to college to learn it at a course. So to know who Harvey Milk is, to know those movements, those rights, a lot of those clubs that are there were the hub. That's the only place where the LGBT community could have gone to back in the 60s to safely go and plan out their movement. And it's the same thing in New York with the Stonewall Club. They're also facing because it's such a major thing, it's kind of staying afloat. But, there's going to be a time where even the Stonewall Club is going to have to face its own demise. And Stonewall is a major, major venue for history. And it's like, when we give a shit about certain history, we'll save it. If it's George Washington, fucking Mark Twain, and I love Mark Twain, but if it's those guys, oh yeah, we'll keep their house. We won't even change the fucking sheets they slept in. But if it's of a group that nobody gives a shit about, whether it be women, gays, blacks, Mexicans, any of that shit, then it's like, oh, that's just a part of life. That's just a part of the natural turn of things where history it goes away. I mean, that's what pictures are for, and memories. So it'll always be alive in your brain. It's like, fuck that.
And in your heart.
I want to jump in with my point here. I'm going to really, really, really play devil's advocate because, ironically, you're talking about this, and of all people, Pastor Manning is up in arms about almost the same thing right now. Ironically, though, he's blaming the homosexual demons and the liberal conspiracy for getting away all the churches. Totally different, but it's in the context of this discussion. He's worried that all the churches are being pushed out of the neighborhoods because of development and everything else, but he has his demons of who to be able to blame. And you're right. You're absolutely right, Haven. If it's right, if it's white, it's all right. But, gay, lesbian, transgendered, anything else? Maybe. Stonewall. And the other thing, too, is back to the story the main show did, a lot of this can be blamed on technology. You have Grindr to meet up with folks. You have, you know, all these other things that you could use to go do stuff. You don't need a bar or a central hub anymore when you have that app in your back pocket to be able to go find somebody. So there's a little bit of technological blame to throw at you for some red meat to get yelled at about in the chat room too.
Well, it's more of a big picture sort of thing, because it isn't just happening to the LGBT community. It is happening to, you know, poor and minorities in these areas that suddenly become areas of tech booms. Once again, Silicon Valley, right? And it's great that to see these places growing, but at the same time, you are kicking out the local people because everything is raising so much faster and so much more than what people are actually earning, so they can no longer stay in that area. And that's a huge problem, because, you know, suddenly you're displacing a lot of people who could no longer afford it. Maybe there could be a solution in perhaps offering higher paying jobs and raising up the, you know, wages in those areas and bringing those up and bringing other people with you. But I'm not sure how you could actually implement such a solution, or if it even is a solution.
Well, I think one of the major problems is that we attach certain things that are important, and if it's outside of our circle, those things aren't important. Like, I'm not a Mexican American, but I know that there are several individuals in this country that made a major headway for Mexican Americans. Now, I had to go out of my way to find that out. It's not like somebody gave that to me. And I guess this ties back into the story on Texas. We don't teach each other that our histories are interwoven, they're intertwined. Everybody had a part to play. So when it comes to certain things of heritage, or even giving a fuck about certain people being in your neighborhood, we are all too easy about never seeing a certain group of people. We're all too easy. Like, I can be in a neighborhood where it's all black and nobody would give a shit. Nobody cares. Nobody even thinks twice about it. But, you know, there are people that live outside of us. There are people who see the world differently than us. And the problem with gentrification is that a very specific group of people come in and push everything out. And it's a disservice not only to the poor people, but also to the people moving in, because it prolongs their ignorance of people outside of them. They start having a worldview where it's like, oh, how I think is the natural way of things, because I've never been challenged. I've never seen anything different. And, you know, gentrification happens. Flows and migrations of people moving and living out of different neighborhoods. That does happen. I'm not, you know, against something that's natural. What I am against is the fact that we let that rob us of understanding each other. We let that rob us of learning that, oh, you know, how it is to live as a gay American in San Francisco is very different from a tech person in San Francisco. You know, you have a lot of people that are homeless right now. And none of those tech people, it's not like, I mean, Google's great and all, they're busing their people into the work and shit, but none of them are really doing anything to help the homeless people that are in San Francisco, that are living on the streets right now. None of them are doing that shit. But I guarantee you they love going out to right outside of Berkeley to hang out in the bohemian area where there's starving artists. But they don't want to feed those motherfuckers. It's like, you know, we can do better.
This goes back to sort of the bubble thing that I mentioned, you know, outside of the show, you know, before the show. People live in their bubbles, and you're right. That's the problem with gentrification, is the bubble mentality, is pushing out people who are different than you, that you could learn something from, that you can find a new perspective. And that's not just a problem with gentrification. That's just a problem that we have overall in a lot of our communities, is that we're still separating ourselves, and you know, you will see a lot of, and you probably have seen a lot of people fighting against. I mean, this goes into the idea of multiculturalism, and you're seeing a large pushback against multiculturalism, against seeing people of other perspectives and learning about people with other perspectives. And that's why you see a lot of people being like, well, why isn't there a White History Month? There's a Black History Month that I don't care about. There's a Women's History Month that I don't care about. Why is there no White History Month? You don't understand. Like, it's important to learn about other people's history so that you can understand them better.
Never mind the fact that White History Month is just called fucking history.
Exactly.
You have white history all the time. It's history. You have male history all the time. It's just, that's the default position.
Right. It's not about taking away people's culture, and it's not about fighting white or destroying white culture. It's about trying to learn about other people so that you can understand them and understand their perspectives, so that you can be a more well-rounded, more educated person. I don't see anything wrong with learning and knowledge. If you fear learning and knowledge, you are part of the problem, because you are advocating ignorance.
All right, I just want to add one slightly positive thing about what Haven said a few times ago. It's just I didn't want to interrupt anybody when they're in the zone. Is that part of the reason that a lot of these clubs are going out of business is because gay people are becoming more accepted in our society. Like, those used to be the only places you could go, and you could make arrangements, and you could plot out what plans you're going to have for your civil rights, like rallies and stuff like that. And now that they're more acceptable, like, they have more choices. So it's like a weird, like, part of it, at least a small percentage of it, isn't gentrification. It's actually a little bit of progress. So I think that's good. But as far as like people wanting to advocate and keep these places as historical landmarks, I'm totally in favor of that. We have a bunch of landmarks that I don't care about. There's a historical building up on Long Island that I've been to. That's a Dunkin' Donuts, but it's still a historical building. So you could have whatever you want, and you can keep historical buildings, and I believe in that, and I believe in preserving history, and rich people can just fuck off if they don't like that.
I live in a historical building. Like, it used to be a train station, now it's an apartment. Like, you can just but keep it, like, and they have placards and stuff about what this building used to be, and it's really, really interesting to see. The place that I lived in, where I'm laying right now, used to be an office for a very prominent businessman in Norfolk. So it's like, that's awesome to know. It ties me to the city that I'm living in. And I think a lot of people don't even do that anymore.
Yeah, like, here's I guess an anecdote that I have. Years ago, back in one of the older towns that I had lived in, there was an old building from I think it was built in the 20s, and there was a part of it. It had been renovated into an apartment building, but there was an upstairs that was untouched, and I was able to go up there and take a look. And it still had the old wiring, the old types of electrical switches. It was a mess up there, but it was kind of amazing because you could imagine what it looked like back in the 1920s, and it was really sort of amazing. And that kind of connected me with a piece of history from that place. I thought it was super cool. All right. Thank you, Haven, for presenting that. Is there any more anybody wants to add to this? Any anecdotes similar?
I would say personally, in my home city of Miami, we're facing a little bit more complicated situation. There's, it's no big secret that South Florida is basically Latin America. It's more Latin America than America. And, you can go into certain neighborhoods where it feels like you're in Puerto Rico, or it feels like you're in Haiti, or it feels like you're in Cuba. And all that's really nice and really great. I loved growing up there because I don't know any way to function outside of being in nothing but diversity. But right now, the city is facing an influx of a lot of people coming in from Brazil. And there was a point in time in growing up there where you had to be bilingual if you wanted to get a job past a certain point, past a certain level. it's a requirement, which I think is beautiful. That's great. And one of the indications of how influential these Brazilians are to the area is that a lot of major areas are requiring people to learn Portuguese. And that's really interesting. But the thing is that this is not just working class Brazilians coming into the area. They're very, very wealthy. And they're not really living there. Some of them are expatriates, but a lot of them, this is just a summer home for them. So it's raising the price of living in a lot of areas, and it's also pushing a lot of people out. So, I mean, gentrification can happen where it's an outside force from different people outside of the country, inside of the country. It's just, you know, it's interesting because I will never be able to go back to my grandmother's house because that area got bought off, and there's going to be a high-rise there now. You know, I'll never be able to go to certain historical areas, and there are a lot of historical areas in Miami, but those are going to get bulldozed down so that there can be a parking lot so that when Europeans want to come in for Ultra Pride music festival, they can have some place to park. And, I mean, that's what is the most damaging to me, is that we kill off the most beautiful parts of our cities.
Right. Right, and like I said, like you pointed out, it isn't just, you know, a one certain group of wealthy billionaires from, you know, Manhattan or something coming in and doing the gentrification. It can be, you know, wealthy people from everywhere, from anywhere. You know, wealthy Brazilians, wealthy Australians, wealthy, you know, Britons. I mean, you know, people coming in from all different places, and it's not just you know, the big bad, you know, white person coming in. It's from people from all over that's doing the same thing. So, you know, we're not blaming one group of people, and we're also not, you know, blaming the people from wanting to come in to a city that they might like and to try and grow a business there or something like that. It's just the problems with people that are already there not being able to keep up with the amount of progress, you know, mainly because they can't afford to live there anymore. And I think that's something that might need to be looked at, you know, offering better job opportunities to people in the area, creating businesses where the locals can get better paying jobs and can increase their economy and be able to afford to live in these nicer places, or these places that are now improved through the gentrification process. So it's a very, very nuanced issue and sort of a difficult one to deal with. On the one hand, you don't want to stop progress, but you also don't want to kill off the local flavor. And so, I mean, this is something that you really have to kind of take a big nuanced look at and try to figure something out that benefits everyone.
Especially for tech startups, we all know that the internet is never going to catch on long term. So, like, you shouldn't sacrifice your old culture for these new web companies.
No, well, it is a series of tubes. So, I mean, once in a while, them tubes are going to get all clogged up, and then that's it.
Well, Sean, I know you're trying to be a smartass about that, but do realize that without raw metals, there is no fucking internet. So once that runs out, yes, even the internet, too, will be a finite thing. So it's like, learn to love it now while you're alive, but I'm pretty sure eventually it's going to run out, and we're not going to be able to sustain it, especially if we have countries like India and China wanting the same level of infrastructure as far as technology is concerned.
Asteroid mining. Mine the asteroids. Go.
Obviously, Haven isn't.
Wait. No.
Haven isn't familiar with the cloud. It's made of water and
No.
air.
No, it's no cloud. No, it's the flying drone that you can hit like a piñata. That's what it is.
Now you
Forget
realize
your cloud with the water in the air.
You realize the Pirate Bay runs a drone, right? Like that's where they host their servers. Kind of interesting. I heard that
cloud drone.
It's a cloud drone. It's actually literally
Works
concealed in a flying cloud. It's literally the cloud, pirate cloud. But
pirate clouds are actually called fog, Jeff.
Not when it's up in the air, dude.
No, they sneak in and they pirate other ships via fog cover, like X-Men 1.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Anyway, that's all we have for you tonight. I want to thank you, Haven, Sean, Tom, for making a very entertaining show tonight. Very informative and entertaining. That's what we shoot for. I want to thank you guys for being here, and I want to thank you guys at home for watching. Of course, here on TYT Community, watching yesterday and today. I'm going to have a great show, a couple of shows for you next week. Halloween. Actually, we're going to have a Halloween show on Friday. So that's going to be pretty good. I'm going to dress up as a successful person. It'll be great. I wish I knew what it was like to be a successful person. So
Jeff never told me next week was a Halloween special, so I have almost nothing.
Just come shirtless and like gold Speedos, and you can be that guy from Rocky Horror Picture Show. Pretty sure Tom would love that.
Damn, works for me, man. Just right up my alley. You made my... Do it, Sean. Do it. Do it. Just, yeah, do it.
For once, I'm not the one being asked to be in a toga. Thank God.
Toga, toga, toga. Come on,
To be fair, I don't want to see Sean in a Speedo either. That's disturbing. That
And
might
Jeff-
get us kicked off YouTube.
And Jeff, to be fair, if you're gonna do the successful person thing, I don't want you with Donald Trump's hair. You're not allowed to drive to New York and steal his hair for this. No, bad.
His hair, look, his hair is a living organism. I think it's probably a parasite that you can't get off your head. So I would avoid trying to steal the. You know that's where his brain went. It actually got sucked out through his scalp. True story. I know what happened to Trump's brain. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching at home.
I'll be the king next week.
Yeah, it's too early for that. Haven gets away with her costume because it's cool. You don't, because you suck.
Now I'm a sad clown.
Oh boy. Anyway, tune in next week, next Thursday for TYT Community News and Politics, and Friday for our special Halloween show, which hopefully we'll have a few more Halloween stories because these were fun about trick or treating and such. That was a fun story. Got to make fun of rich people. It's great. Make sure, of course, to subscribe if you haven't already. Facebook, TYT Nation, TYT Community. Follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. At Jeff's Politics, at TYT Community. Follow Haven GOTS, right? And, check out her YouTube channel. Was it PyroHaven7?
PyroHaven07. I just got a new video out about the need for lesbians and straight guys to be good friends. So by all means, check it out. Like that video, please.
Lesbros. Gotta have the Lesbros, right? Like
It's all
fist
about
bump,
Lesbros.
right?
Yeah. Lesbro. Bam.
Lesbros.
Yum, 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 yum. Cake.
Oh, God, Sean, go away with the clown. Go the fuck away with the clown.
Go fly off on the cloud, sir.
I'm disturbed. Make it stop.
This oh, by the way, too, we're gonna have Silas on Thursday night as well. He's gonna join us, and I think from what I hear, Dell might be on Friday. So interesting. Gonna be an interesting last couple of shows for me for a while. So that should be a lot of fun. So if, hey, you guys want on to be on that Halloween special, let me know, jeffw@tytnetwork.com, or post it on any one of our social media that I've been plugging. So, all right, everybody. From here, everybody at the TYT Community, thank you all for hanging out. We'll see you next week. And let me bring something up.
Bye, guys. Yum 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 yum. Yum 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 yum. Recovery technical error. Yum